Thank you, Spencer, and good morning, everybody. Out of the box, TV absolutely everywhere, and as you can see, I took the editorial liberty to add a question mark because I think over the next 45 minutes or so we want to bring some clarity around the issue. I will take the next 5 to 6 minutes to frame our discussion, to look at where we stand in terms of penetration and future trends as we see them from Booz and company. And I think you're going to realize soon I have some answers, but certainly more questions. I think as a starting point, it's important to remind ourselves when we talk about television that we are talking about by far the #1 mass medium around the globe, both in terms of penetration and in terms of usage. If you look at the numbers up there, we've been talking a lot about internet and broadband growth here at this forum and other forums, and rightly so. Broadband by now has reached mass market penetrations in all Western economies of 70% plus of the households. But there's still a very significant gap to close compared to television, where television is today and where television has been for some time. It is still the most widely penetrated technology. And it's actually contested in this position as #1, not by broadband internet, but by mobile. And therefore, I think the question of TV everywhere in terms of what does mobile and the other technologies do to our TV viewing experience is a very timely one. So the technology is out there. The question is, are the consumers adopting these new technologies? What I brought here are some usage numbers out of the US, which at least compared to most European markets still have kind of a lead position. And if you look at these numbers which show television and video usage across different platforms in hours and minutes per month, I want to call out the sort of traditional TV in the home first, which still amounts a staggering 140 hours a month in the US, almost 5 hours a day. So if you think or are thinking that television is in serious trouble or sort of close to death as the web, I think you can rethink again. Nevertheless, having said that, if you add up watching time-shifted on the PVR, watching video on mobile phones and online, and compare that to the total video experience, you see in the US that about 10% of total usage is already or has migrated to different platforms. And that view is actually slightly distorted if you look at the total market, because if you zoom into younger demos, you see that this number is much higher and is growing much faster than in the total market. And there are actually quite some sizable consumer segments which are difficult to reach even today via traditional television in the US. I think it's also interesting to sort of turn it around and look at it from a new media point of view. If you add up total internet and mobile usage, video and TV consumption makes up about a quarter of that usage experience. So it's a very broad part of that usage as well. So one aspect which is not on this chart is interactivity. If you look at the developments, in particular on the TV screen, what happens to HBTV in Germany, which has been launched this year, or YouView in the UK, they are interactive platforms in all markets. So there's no doubt that these markets are converging from a consumer point of view in a very profound way. So what does that mean? First of all, the competitive set is changing. What I brought here is a view in my home market in Germany. What you see here at the bottom, the light bar, is sort of the traditional or core television markets, the broadcasters, the cable TV companies, the pay TV operators, Sky in that case, which has been a very closed environment and to a certain extent still is. But now different layers of new players come in. The telcos, first and foremost, Deutsche Telekom with entertainment, entertain their IPTV offer, and also the other players, Telefonica, O2, and Vodafone, have launched similar services. And obviously, as we're going to discuss today, now very distinctively new media players like the Apples and the Googles of the world, who all want to enter that market with a very distinct view, with a very distinct experience of their background and their home market. So competition is going to intensify, and there is, if you turn that into sort of economic numbers, i.e. what kind of euro volume is at stake, it's quite a significant market to look at. What you see here is what we would consider the core television market. So if you want all commercial transactions which happen within or at least around the box so far, so advertising, public service fee, DVD usage, pay TV, cable TV, and also adjacent, in particular transactional. This is home shopping by and large. It's a 15 billion market, so very sizable. It's quite heterogeneous already. And if you look at, the growth driver, it's interesting to see that most projections predict that pay and also transactional TV are going to drive market growth in terms of euro going forward. And that's not new. This is actually what has happened also over the last 5 years. I said these markets are converging, and from our point of view, this slide is slightly misleading in the sense that this market is already embedded in a much larger ecosystem. And this is what you see on the next chart. The sort of yellowish, brownish areas sort of describe the markets we were just talking to. And you see a lot of white areas, which are markets which essentially come into play in this larger TV ecosystem, starting from advertising. If you look at advertising in the web, a broadcaster is in direct competition, not only with the publisher, for example, but also with new media players like Google. You have hardware players, e-commerce at large, and to the right, the whole communication market, adding up to a total of around 100 billion in total. And you see that the core television markets only make up about 15% of this whole environment. I think it's very important to bear this context in mind. All these markets have different dynamics, different players with a different history, and also, to a good extent, with different pressure points, why and how they attack and enter television markets. So let's zoom in into one of the very important revenue streams, because one of the big questions here is obviously, are there going to be shifts in value pools across these different player types we're talking about? If you look at TV advertising on a global scale, it has been hurt by the recession, as you would expect, but not, by far not quite as bad as other media like in the print. And most notably, television has rebounded much faster and much better, essentially in all markets around the world, compared to other media. And this is why we see television players actually in a very good shape right now. If you, I don't know whether you follow it, but RTL, the largest European broadcaster, they will report record profits this year because they've taken down the cost. Advertising is rebounding. That adds up all quite nicely. Having said that, you still see that the only media category which has been growing throughout is digital, and that goes beyond television. It's just sort of a key trend in advertising at large. So there is a shift in value pool to new media, and obviously with that also to new media player. In fact, making Google already today the largest advertising collector worldwide, dwarfing even media giants like Viacom, CBS, or Time Warner on that dimension. The big question, obviously, is what are these developments doing to the TV environment? Is that growing the pie for all players involved, or are there more significant shifts in terms of value pools to be expected? The question being how to respond. And just in case you missed the subtle clue here, look at the chessboard. It's getting a bit more complicated. That's our view. Obviously, it's very difficult to answer broad brush, but there are 3 areas where we believe most players need to focus on in terms of shaping the television ecosystem of the future. One is around innovation, and that's very notably not around technology. The technology is in place, but it's around user experience and business models. We view the television markets pretty much where mobile broadband has been before the iPhone kicked in and kind of cracked the code in terms of user experience. That's still something to be done in television. Second is alliance and partner strategy. Both, there are a lot of very established entrenched partnerships in place which need to be rethought and reshaped in many instances, and we're going to see a lot of new partnerships across the value chain to kick in. And last, not least, adjust the mindset to an open TV ecosystem. As I said, we don't have the answer yet, but it's very clear from our point of view that the television market will evolve into something like a web type of environment. And if you look at traditional television markets, they have been very closed system, vertically integrated. And that mindset, which was essentially around defending your position and making sure that nobody else comes in, served the players very well for the last 10 years. It probably won't serve them well for the future. That is what I wanted to tell to kick it off. So thank you very much, and over to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That was great.
Thank you.
Now, Thomas, I'm wondering, you know, one part of looking at all of this, how do you factor in tablet viewing? Does that factor, or will you factor it in? Will it be in mobile? Will it be in PC?
Well, technically speaking, if you look at the numbers, it's measured right now under PC. The big question going forward, is it going to be a category in its own right, and how is it going to be used primarily? And I think it by nature leans toward mobile usage. So looking at the future, this should be a part of the mobile domain.
Does it matter how you get it? Does it matter if you get it by Wi-Fi or if you get it by a network?
Well, I think I would pick that up from a consumer point of view. I think the consumer ultimately is interested in the content and user experience. He couldn't care less around what network carries the content. So in terms of user experience, this should be seamless. Obviously, I think we're going to see a lot of sort of cross-network solutions there, depending where you are and what you do.
You know, Michael, for you right now, out of the box is specifically the PC experience. Where is that going? Because you've already got, I think you've got a deal with Samsung for their tablet. Can you talk a little bit about what out of the box means to what you're doing?
Sure. I think there are two dimensions to out of the box. One is shifting from a scheduled world to an on-demand world. So going from 50, 100, 200 channels to effectively having access to 10,000, 100,000 pieces of content. And the second is moving from, you know, a single device to multiple devices. So out of the box is we're storing stuff in the cloud for you. You're watching it on your tablet. You're watching it on your PC, your iPad, your Samsung Tele, your PS3. It's any internet-connected device. We're holding it for you in the cloud.
So it goes towards, to you, it's more towards the cloud than it is towards device-specific.
Yes. Yeah. We actually offer both streaming and downloading. What we find is our consumers don't download anymore. A very, very small percentage. Everything is downloaded. Everything else is streamed. So they just log in and they expect instant access.
Dan, what are people, I mean, are people taking advantage of the out-of-the-box experience that BBC offers? I mean, are they watching it on portable devices, on tablets, on mobile? And how does the BBC Worldwide view the out-of-the-box experience? What are you trying to provide?
I mean, I think we, you know, both as a content provider and as an aggregator, we see it as an incredible opportunity. I think that you know, when we talk about, you know, is it kind of cloud-based, and we talk about the economics of the situation, I think sometimes we forget about what a revolutionary shift the tablet is. And I think it's less about being a mobile experience and more about being an immersive experience. So the data that we're seeing, you know, shows that on the web, you know, I guess as program makers, we were feeling quite frustrated that in the main, and this is no slight on YouTube, but you know, people loved the sort of 3 to 7 minute clips, but you know, no program maker really found that a particularly enjoyable experience, and the BBC sort of found that quite difficult to deal with in some ways. But you know, now with a tablet, we're seeing 40, 50 minute kind of immersion times and much longer session times, and people kind of use it as a private screen to watch telly on, and then with the added functionality that it has, I think that's just an incredible opportunity for us to bring television to people in a kind of more meaningful way.
Giles, we have the technology to do just about anything that we want to do right now, but what does, how do you make that TV experience work across devices, and does it really matter how people are watching it? I mean, does it matter if they're watching on what kind of screen they're watching?
No, I don't think it does, and I think to a large extent we've got a little bit too caught up in the technology orientation of it. What is the device? What network is supplying it? TV for me, it's a service. It's aggregated content and all of the associated pieces that go with that. And out of the box and multi-screen, what that's really about is taking that user experience and making that accessible across multiple devices and whatever network you can reach that device on at any point and any time. So I think we need to move away from seeing it as a technology-oriented dimension and move to the kind of experience-oriented dimension.
Patrick, Google is coming at this in so many different directions. One of the first things I think a lot of us do as soon as we get a new device is try out YouTube on it and see how that works. It's like the perfect experiment way to look at something. But what are you seeing? I mean, and in terms of Google TV, I think people have, that's very much tied to the box. But at the same time, you're also trying to blend it in with the Android experience on devices. Mm-hmm. So how do you take this and put it all together in a way that makes money for you and makes sense to the rest of us?
Okay, it's a big question. Well, just thinking about TV, I think there's sort of two definitions of TV that people have. One is the content that's most associated with TV, and that is well out of the box already. That is being distributed, services like the iPlayer, services like Hulu and others, owned and operated sites by the broadcasters, are taking that TV content and making it available on tablets, on PCs, more and more on the mobile phone. Through YouTube as well, we're increasing the amount of high-quality, full-length programming, particularly in Europe. And as, whatever the device is, as the form factor becomes easier to use and as the bandwidth available increases, the shift from consumption of short form to long form also moves accordingly. So right now in the PC space, where you have high bandwidth and a lot more cleared rights and content coming on from television, the consumption of full-length, high-quality, even HD content is exploding. On the handset, we're seeing YouTube usage skyrocket as the form factors improve. The iPhone, the Android devices, the availability of a browser, YouTube mobile usage has skyrocketed. Actually, YouTube mobile usage today is many times greater than YouTube overall usage was at the time of the acquisition 5 years ago. It's huge, and but it's mostly short form. Why? Because it's easier to access. You've got the buffering. People are less patient with long form content on a small device as they're moving as well in and out of connected areas. So what we're seeing is that movement of TV content and also the creation of new content already proliferating. Now, you talk about out of the box, we're also talking about going into the box, and that's the Google TV conversation. The television itself is so easy to use. It's used by 5 billion around the world, 5 hours a day. That's not changing, but the technology behind it has not changed really much over the past several years. And so what's happening is people are becoming habituated to full web. The TV hasn't moved in that direction, so they're doing unnatural things in front of the TV. They're watching TV, but at the same time they're using their mobile phone to search something, or they're using a tablet, or they're using a PC to get additional information or chat with their friends. So what we're looking at is a seamless way to integrate the full web experience with the device known as the TV, which is the big, high-quality box in the living room. And that's going to come down again to quality of experience, ease of use, and collaboration with partners across the industry.
One of the things that's happened, though, with Google TV is that you have a very clear view of it, but the programmers also have a very clear view, and some of the broadcasters want to treat you as more of a multi-channel operator almost by bringing it in over the TV set. So for now, you're being blocked by Fox, CBS, ABC, NBC in the US, which brings up the sort of whole issue of rights, which is, all of you have really great things to offer. All of these devices are wonderful, but at the moment, it's very difficult to actually take content and see it across all of these devices or use it that way because of the different definitions that are going on. Mm-hmm. Michael, you're not even on a mobile at the moment. Is that a rights issue? Is it a quality issue?
I don't think 22-minute episodes and long-form films play particularly well on a 2-inch screen. So we could go after the rights. They would cost us a lot of money. I mean, the issue of rights, we distribute for all the major studios, but you have to work with them. So you have to develop a partnership with them. You have to understand how they want to do things, and you go forward that way. The economics of mobile for us don't stack up. I mean, interesting, Patrick's comment about getting into the box. We're excited about moving from the traditional PC into TV because consumers have a much higher propensity to pay in a television environment. So what we're seeing is our consumers are coming in via the PS3 are 5 times as likely to buy and pay as a consumer coming in on PC. So moving into the box has a real impact on our economics. I mean, broad brushstrokes, I think about, bottom line being proportional to screen size. 50-inch telly, that's a really profitable market, PC to mobile. So that's broad brushstrokes how I think about it.
Well, I noticed, for instance, last night, I think when I turned on the TV set, I was sort of startled that the first thing I got was an American program, The Mentalist. But of course, when I opened Blinkbox on my screen, there was, you offer it, but only in the UK.
Correct. Yeah.
And if I want to download it from one of my services that I pay for right now from here, I'd have to go in through my home computer and try to fake it out to do that. Is this crippling? Is this holding back the ability to expand content across devices, across platforms? And how do you get around that and still stay within the economics of the system? These are expensive shows to put on. How do you leash that in? Dan, how do you come at that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing. I mean, it fundamentally does come down to for content producers and broadcasters, it sort of comes down to the economics of the situation. And, TV shows, and particularly the types of TV show that the BBC produces and BBC Worldwide distributes, tend to be fairly expensive to make. And so we're always rather reluctant, therefore, to potentially, damage one very profitable business line, on the hope of making a future one more worthwhile. But ultimately, we know that's something we have to do. We have to move with the audience and give them what they want. And the economics will sort themselves out over time. I'm convinced of that. And I think, businesses on a whole, I think, have they set very ambitious long-term strategies, but often the short-term decisions tend to be more orientated towards short-term profits. And I guess, the principal role that I play is continually banging the drum for the 3 to 5 to 10 year time horizon about what we need to do in order to ensure that we're going to be viable in terms as a content producer, distributor, and brand manager going forward, with a greater connection to audiences. And that will be done on services like Blinkbox and with Google and with Apple and in partnership with all these technology providers.
Well, and in fact, one of the things that's happened is services like Netflix, like Blinkbox, particularly like Netflix right now, have become a bridge between devices. So that instead of having to know where you have the rights to play a movie that you want to watch, all you need is that subscription, and you can go cut across it all. So do they become the new multi-channel operators? Are they, and if all they have is older content, are we just time delaying? I mean, are we moving into the ultimate time shifting here, where we're all okay watching older content because we can make it easier to watch instead of getting the fresh new stuff? Thomas, do you see what are consumers asking for in that regard?
Yeah, I think one important point to bear in mind is if you look at consumer research around television, a lot of the experience the consumers typically look for is around relaxation. So in most cases, we don't get in front of the television knowing I want to see an episode of Mentalist. I mean, there are situations where this is the case, but in the majority of viewing time, you just switch on and look what's there. And therefore, we believe that this kind of linear schedule, old school TV will have an important role to play, will also have an important role to play to build all the brands we're talking about. I mean, the episodes which we are looking for have always grown up on a scheduled television scene. Having said that, non-linear is going to grow. There's no doubt about it. And I think, again, from a consumer point of view, is Netflix a multi-channel operator? I think Netflix tells a very interesting story in terms of what the consumer wants. The consumer wants to have the content wherever he feels like consuming it. And I think ultimately the industry has to find a way to provide that. There's still a lot of issues to be resolved. But I think a lot of sort of traditional thinking, how we look at value chains and how the old system has been operated right now, stand a bit in the way to define and develop the new TV ecosystem.
Yeah.
I'd like to invite people to ask questions. So if you have a question, raise your hand so Mike can come to you. All right.
Sorry. Just wanted to mention something. I think the rights themselves and the contracts, some of these legacy contracts haven't kept up pace with the change of technology. And just to get to your point when you mentioned about Google TV and the perceptions of it, we haven't done a very good job, I think, at Google so far of really communicating what it is, I think, and what it isn't. I mean, in simple terms, it's blending your TV information, your TV experience with a full web experience with apps and a way to search across them all seamlessly. That's what it is. It's Android operating system, Chrome browser, and Flash on a basic level. So we haven't done a very good job communicating what it is. And then what's happening when you said people are blocking us, they're not blocking us, they're blocking themselves from appearing on it because they haven't yet got to the point where they've come to terms with the cable operators and others to, no, I mean, you have to make sure that you're able to transmit across these devices and that your contracts are up to speed with that. So if you're a service like Hulu and you're on the web, you're free and ad supported, and on television that same content is accessed through a pay service, you have to be very careful about allowing yourself to transmit on these new platforms if you haven't sorted out the rights behind it. So there's a lot that we need to do and that the partners need to do and rights holders need to do to keep pace with the change. Now, the user's already out there, right? And they're out there, and to the extent that you don't clear those rights and make yourself available on these platforms, they will find alternative ways to get this content, and oftentimes those ways may not end up with money coming to you. So,
Is Google going to pay retrans fees?
excuse me?
Is Google going to pay retransmission fees? Are you going to pay the broadcasters or Hulu, or are you going to find a way to do revenue sharing or something that makes these agreements possible? Well,
again, it's like, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what it is. When somebody goes on the handset and they access the web on an Android operating system, we don't have anything to do with that. We have nothing to do with the website showing ads on the handset and the provider of those ads and the one providing that content. We're a neutral operating system.
I do understand that, but at the same time, every time I try to access Hulu Plus, the premium service, through Google TV, it says you're working with them. So what are you working with them to do?
Well, what we're trying to do is create ways that they can adapt the product and optimize it for the platform. And that may be through enhancing the quality, because the expectation on the television set in itself is of a much higher quality experience. And also being able to adapt according to the platform, whether it's ad-supported or whether it's pay. And the good thing is we'll be launching the Android marketplace, the App Store, onto Google TV, which will allow for sort of made-for-platform apps that address that question. So you may block your site from appearing through the browser experience on Google TV, but you can create an app that solves that problem.
Dave Morgan?
Dave Morgan from Multimedia. Actually, I guess coincidentally, my question was right down that line, so Patrick, I'd like to follow that up. Might some actually say that the decision of the networks to block Google is not just the contract's not keeping up yet with the users, but actually a proactive strategy to control discovery and the interface to content? I mean, we've seen Facebook has built a strategy where they've said you are not going to crawl them, and they've been able to build a multi-billion-dollar business. eBay probably, if they would have to do over again, would do what Taobao's doing in China and not letting Baidu crawl them, making you have to come there and control the monetization and interface. And so wouldn't you argue that it's not just, let's say, the $15 billion of revenue each year that the content guys are getting on carriage deals, but it's also recognizing that's a long-term user interface control play?
Yeah, there's a lot of control that's involved, and there's lots of reasons, actually. Some of them just don't understand it enough, or they're fearful of it. And this is also why you have a differentiation in what we're doing in, say, services like HBTV in Germany, or YouView, formerly Canvas, in the UK, which are essentially built with the collaboration directly of the broadcasters. They're allowing unlimited access to the web. They're very much in control of the navigation and the EPG, if you like, because they fear a broad opening of access to the web. So we need to work carefully and closely with them so that it all works. There's a lot of kind of feeling through and finding good ways for it to happen. But the fact of the matter is, without Google even existing, web onto television is happening. I'm sorry, it's going in that direction. I don't think anyone would argue with that. If I ask you guys a question, how many of you today have a handset that has a browser on it, a web browser, right? How many of you had one 3 years ago? Okay, you guys all work in the high-tech industry. 4 years ago, you go work for Nokia. So now, would you ever buy a handset that doesn't have a browser now that you've experienced the open web? Not one hand has gone up. We think the same thing will happen in a device called the television. So it's going there. So we have to hold hands, find a way to make sure that rights adapt, the platforms adapt, and it's going to happen. We just have to make a good user experience, and we have to find the right way to monetize and collaborate.
Giles?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with some of that. I think it's good to be able to aggregate that content from multiple sources on the TV set, but what I don't think I agree with is that the TV is a good device to do interaction on, and I think that's been proven time and time again. It's not a personal device or a personalized device, it's a sit-back communal device, and I think that where we're going is actually slightly in the opposite direction, which is to use the TV for what it is good at, which is watching high-quality video, but working with multiple devices simultaneously and bringing the advanced user experience down onto a device where it's actually better so that you can sit, have your TV screen display the video and browse the content, search the content, preview the content on your handheld phone, on your pad, or one of those kind of devices. So really separating out the data and interactivity from the viewing itself, and I think that's really where it's probably going.
If I can, we think there are 3 reasons why web on TV has sucked so far. One is it dumbs down the web. Everybody heard of WAP? You everybody use WAP today? If you don't give people the entire web, they're not going to use the web. Secondly, you have to switch input devices. Once you start switching inputs between TV and web, you lose 90% of your audience. And the third one is they're closed. And when they're closed, the ones that create the content and the services have to make multiple versions of it. It's just not economical.
We want to get a question in the back there.
Hi, it's Sachin Dougal here from Niveo. It's actually a question along these lines. How do you see the consumption of content, traditionally maybe say non-media from a TV changing? Because you've got a 10-foot media experience when you're sitting behind a 29-inch screen as opposed to a 2-foot experience when you're looking at a PC. Mm-hmm. So what changes do you think need to happen within the ecosystem for it to really kind of proliferate through?
Well, first of all, you need to, one button, be able to move between and have simultaneous viewing of the web content or the apps and the ongoing TV experience. A lot of times when you're sitting there watching TV, you're prompted to look for something, so certainly you're doing it on your laptop or your handset while you're watching TV. So seamlessly keeping them both in view, moving between them is critical. User experience is critical. And we see that there'll be some interesting content created from broadcasters as well that are moving from, go to your mobile phone and vote for X Factor, or go to the website to, actually launching that within the same environment to enhance the TV experience itself. But there's going to be a lot of sort of feeling our way through.
Sorry, we're getting the roundup sign. Did anyone else want to answer quickly to that?
One obvious thing is user experience. So we have a completely different UI for a Samsung Tele than we do for a PC, than we do for a tablet. The UI, and also you have to have bigger file sizes the larger the screen, so you have to have great video quality. Those would be the 2 biggest ones.
All right, and then last thing as we head off, just really quick, straight across, will consumers pay extra to have access everywhere? Let's not talk about the ones who want everything free. Let's talk about the ones who are willing to pay.
I think the short answer is yes. It's not so much around paying for sort of cross-platform experience, but for sort of a coherent user experience. We expect, if you look at mobile broadband like 3-4 years ago, before iPad or iPhone and the whole app logic kicked in, there was a big question how to monetize mobile broadband. And as soon as somebody cracked the code from a consumer point of view, things moved very rapidly. And we expect to see that in a similar fashion happening in TV as soon as the business model is clear and there's some consensus around it. And yes, this will be multi-screen. There will be also, the pay side of the business is also going to grow.
Subscription coming from you?
Yes, and I would say yes. It's not that they'll pay extra, it's that they will pay. I mean, the difficulty with so many of the web-based business models is you can't make the economics work. Now you flip to television, there's a much higher propensity to pay. You look to the iPad, there's a much higher propensity to pay. So I think across these multiple devices, you will get consumers paying where they wouldn't before.
Yeah, I think multi-platform will be a value add as opposed to genuinely make money in its sort of own right. It will be audience expected, and with the exception of certain types of content, probably sport or event television that people will pay for live on mobile devices.
Yeah, I mean, I think people will pay, but what I also think is that for a TV service offering, if you're not delivering it to multiple devices, people will go somewhere where they can get it to multiple devices. So in that scenario, if you don't do it, you lose your subscription, you lose your ad observations, and you lose all the money.
Well, people are already paying for higher bandwidth, for greater access to more channels, for example. But when it comes to content, they will continue to pay, but they may pay, instead of buying a DVD, they will pay through Blinkbox. The other thing is to keep in mind is the advertisers are willing to pay. And so it's not just all down to the consumer. The consumers are showing a propensity to accept higher quality TV style ads on new devices, and that also will help pay for the content to transmit across the devices. So I'm quite optimistic about that.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.